we're ready to go ahead. I'd like to call to order the City of Belton Planning Commission meeting, Monday, November 7th. May we have the roll call, please?
Chairman McPherson,
Here.
Mayor Larkey,
Here.
Councilmember Pryan, Commissioner McDonough, Commissioner Monahan Bass,
Here.
Commissioner Vest, Commissioner Walton,
Here.
and Commissioner Warren.
Here.
All right, thank you. We do have a non-public hearing and a public hearing this evening for a couple of items. But our first item that we have on our agenda this evening would be the approval of minutes from our October 3rd meeting that have been distributed to each of us. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the October 3rd, 2022 Planning Commission meeting as presented.
Thank you, Mayor. And second, Mr. Walton. Thank you. Are there any corrections, updates that need to be noted? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. That motion did carry. First item of business this evening then, or second item, would be our non-public hearing, which is the consideration of a final development plan for the other place located at the southeast corner of North Cedar Street and Given Avenue for the property addressed as 311 North Cedar Street. And Director?
Thank you, Chair McPherson. Before this evening is a request for a final development plan for the other place, which is a proposed bar and grill restaurant, to be located near the southeast corner of North Cedar Street and Given Avenue in the crossroads of Belton development. The subject property is zoned C2 General Commercial, which permits restaurant and bar uses by right. The site plan includes a 5,150 square foot single-story building with outdoor patio on the north half of the property with parking on the south half of the property. The final development plan does meet all of the development standards within the UDC, with the exception of 4 modifications that are requested with the development plan. That includes a 4-foot reduction in the front setback along Given Avenue from 25 feet to 21 feet. And this would accommodate the covered patio that does encroach 4 feet into that 25-foot setback. There is also a request to reduce the total green space for the site from 20% to 17.2%. Also some modifications to the parking stall sizes, which would align with the existing stall sizes to the parking lot on the south half of the site that serves the inline tenants north of Price Chopper. And then a request for 1 additional wall sign for a total of 4 wall signs for the business. Staff believes that these requested modifications will not negatively impact surrounding properties and does meet the general purpose and intent of the UDC for the general commercial zoning district. Based on the proposed 205 seating capacity, the site has required 52 parking spaces. The plan provides 55 spaces. However, as part of the condition, staff is recommending that 1 space be removed in the first row of parking to widen the stall sizes to 9 feet rather than 8 feet to better accommodate the parking, particularly the ADA spaces in that first row. A conceptual landscape or a final landscape plan has been provided in the packet on page 28, which does provide a mix of trees, evergreens, and deciduous shrubs, as well as ornamental grasses. Due to existing and proposed utility easements on the north and east side of the building, there is not limited space for trees. Additional shrubs have been added in lieu of trees in those locations. The building elevations do meet the design requirements in the UDC, which does provide 4-sided architecture and is well articulated with windows and a mix of materials. Materials include a mix of brick, stone, and ephes, and includes a large outdoor patio that is partially covered. This top elevation here is the north elevation, which is what would face Given Avenue. Everything under this area here is the covered patio. The main entrance would face, there's the south elevation, which would face the internal parking lot as part of the inline shops next to Price Chopper. Additionally, there is a 6-foot wood panel fence with stone columns that will be utilized to screen the east facade. This is a fence detail here. The east facade of the building will serve as the service area for the building and will also contain the trash enclosures for the dumpsters with a gate at the service entrance drive. The site does include 4 ground-mounted light poles in the parking lots, 2 of which already exist, and 2 will be new. Lighting spillover is greater than 1 foot candle at the property lines along the interior lot lines, which include shared access drives and parking areas for the shopping center. That spillover does exceed the maximum of 1 foot candle at the property line. However, staff does believe that the intent of the outdoor lighting standards have been met by providing adequate lighting within the shopping center without negatively impacting nearby residential properties. The lighting spillover does not exceed the 1 foot candle at Given Avenue to meet that requirement. The building elevations do include 4 wall signs, as I previously mentioned. However, that is 1 additional sign beyond what code allows. However, none of the signs do exceed the 10% wall coverage. There is also the option of a monument sign in the future if the applicant does decide to provide that. Staff believes that the findings of fact for the development plan, as well as the review criteria for the modifications for development standards and signage, have been met. The proposed development plan and land use complies with the comprehensive plan and is compatible with the nearby commercial developments. Staff recommends approval of the final development plan for the other place with 6 conditions in the staff report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Director. We have any questions or comments for the director?
Yeah, I got a couple. The 4th wall sign is gonna be on the east side then? Is that why it's not on the drawing?
There's actually 2 here on the south side, so they have the name above the entrance, and then they have a logo
Okay.
here on the
All
south
right, that
elevation.
counts as a sign then, okay.
Yes, it does.
All right. Parking, let me get back to my page. Those bottom 2, are those the existing?
All of these rows of parking are new. Just below the boundary here is where there's existing parking. So they're just mirroring that as they're moving north.
How wide are those?
I believe that they are 9 feet wide. They might be less than 20 foot deep, which is what the code requires.
Oh, so they're less than.
So I think the width on those
Refines the
meets
depth.
the requirement. It's the depth that is a little bit shallower.
Okay. I was gonna say, if it wasn't the width, with the width was a problem, that they could take those middle 2, take 2 lots out of that and make it wider, farther up, that middle section. Yeah, you could
Yeah.
take 2 lots out, 2 spots out of that if the width was a problem, but that ain't a problem.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
So the existing parking, I believe, if I recall in the report, indicated that they are not planning to include that as part of theirs and possibly even plat that separately. Is that
Correct. The existing parking is sufficient to meet the requirements of the inline shopping centers, the inline tenant spaces north of Price Chopper. So the other place will be providing additional parking to meet their requirement.
for theirs? Okay, thank you. Any additional questions?
I do have a design question. I know initially when I saw plans for this a while back, there was pickleball courts. Did that go away? And
Good evening, I'm Russ Enan. I'm the design consultant for the landlord and developer, and I have the same role for the other place. At one time, we had pickleball courts shown just to the east of this lot, which would be to the right of the sheet, and which is along Given and north of the existing strip. There's an undeveloped area there. The operator, the other place at this time, does not find those financially viable, and they don't. They also have some difficulty in managing them because they're across a drive. Everything's outdoors, and they've got a little bit of a concern. 2 o'clock in the morning, somebody having a few beers and playing pickleball. The next properties are residential, so they're not saying no, they're just not sure.
Got it. Good enough for me.
Appreciate that. Are there any other comments or information that you would like to share with the commission?
Yes, if
Absolutely.
if now's the time.
Sure.
First off, I'd like to commend staff. This is a difficult existing, relatively narrow property. It's kind of a trailer house. It's long and narrow, and needling a project of this size into that width has been a little difficult. And as Matt pointed out, the north end of that property is just full of utilities, and we're having to bring some more in across from Given to get the domestic and fire protection water in. So this has been a little bit of a challenge for all of us, but staff was really flexible and at the same time protecting the interests. So I'd like to start there. I think the only comment that we would have and item that we'd like to have considered, the only parking stalls that are shown as 8 feet wide are the disabled parking stalls. On that north row that's closest to the building, all of the standard parking stalls are 9 feet. We have an ADA compliant 8-foot width on the disabled aisles and the disabled parking stalls there. And we'd like to leave that at 8 feet. Otherwise, we're going to lose a parking stall there. As I'm sure you're aware, in restaurants, and especially ones that have a bar presence, parking can be really critical, and especially close to the building. So we'd really like to not lose a parking stall. I think we're certainly accommodating the disabled everywhere in the world. Disabled stalls 8 feet wide. So I understand it's not per your ordinance, but that's the only exception we would have to staff recommendations.
So ADA is 8 foot and 9 foot for the other. Is that?
So the minimum ADA standard nationally is 8 feet wide. Our code does require 9 feet. Staff's thought was just making sure that the ADA space was equal to the standard spot. However, if the Planning Commission does not think that that is necessary, you could make a recommendation to strike condition number 3 from the recommendation from staff.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Oh, go ahead. Or,
Yes.
sorry.
There is a lot of other parking in this area,
Mhm.
and I realize that those are as required for the existing businesses that are there. But I don't know if anybody's ever driven by there. I guarantee they're never full. So there is ample. Not to alter this gentleman's concern about that, but there is plenty of parking in that area.
So
I'd be okay with their request, knowing the situation with this lot and knowing that there's existing parking there. I would be okay with that, plus what city manager just said too.
So we are still looking at 50, I'm sorry, is it
55.
55
Sorry.
spots? Plus the additional overflow that would be available.
The entire development has full access, meaning, as the city manager pointed out, with the current tenant lineup in the inline, there's certainly plenty of parking there to be shared. Obviously, over time, as more development happens on that north end, and in the event the users change, then the parking demands can alter over time, and you obviously address those with each new development plan. But for the current situation, I think there's more than enough parking to be sure.
Any additional questions or comments from the commission? So this is a part of a TIF area, correct? That has not really had a lot of activity in it, so it would be a good
Exactly.
start, and
Yeah.
hopefully generate some additional interest in that area then.
The developer has brought several new tenants recently. They brought a frozen yogurt,
Right.
Allstate Insurance, which doesn't generate a lot for the CID, and then the medical marijuana dispensary in the other place. And there's some other earnest prospects. So coming out of the, whatever you want to call the flu nonsense of the last 3 years, that's a pretty good accomplishment. You're not seeing a lot of brick and mortar infill currently, so I think they've done a really job to get a robust lineup in there.
I know I have seen and heard a number of comments asking, because people, like on social media, they've seen the sign, and it's like, when is it coming? Where's it going to be? And I know that there had originally been talk of maybe moving into one of the existing spaces, I think, if I recall.
The end cap of the inline,
Yeah.
we were within 2 weeks of submitting for building permit. The drawings were virtually done. And the medical marijuana dispensary group had been unable to find a home, and they were going to lose their license for Belton, and Belton wouldn't have gotten another license. It would just evaporate. So the developer struck a deal with the other place to give up their end cap, and so the marijuana folks took it over, and that pushed us back a little bit. But I think we have a nice product, and
And I agree that
kind of a-
does look like a difficult area for a lot of businesses to really take advantage of. So.
and we think the building's a nice contribution as well.
Mr. Chair?
Mayor?
I'd make a motion for the consideration of a final development plan for the other place located at the southeast corner of North Cedar Street and Gibbon Avenue for the property addressed as 311 North Scott, with the requested changes as presented.
And is there a second? That, let me clarify, that includes striking the space change for the
Yeah,
parking, is
space
that correct?
changes and the sign
So the recommendations would have included the additional signage, the changing from 8 foot to 9 foot, and we're striking that requirement of doing the 8 to 9, which I think was part, 3?
Yeah, so it would be approval with all conditions except
for
for
3.
item number 3.
Just so we can make sure and get that clear in the recording of what we are doing. So we do have that motion.
I second that motion.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. A second. Any additional comments? Seeing none, may we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Monahan Bass. Aye. Mayor Larkey.
Aye.
Commissioner Warren. Commissioner Walton.
Aye.
And Chairman.
Aye. Thank you.
And I will note that condition number 6 on there was related to 3, so 6 is automatically removed as well from that list of conditions.
Okay, thank you. All right, very good. So we will, thank you all. We will call to order a public hearing for the consideration of certain text amendments to the United Development Code, UDC, related to standards for signage, home-based businesses, and boards and commissions. Director.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Before you this evening are several code amendments, most of which are to bring the code into compliance with Missouri state statutes. The first section of the amendments are to Articles 5 and 6 in Chapter 2 of the UDC for the Board of Zoning Adjustment and the Planning Commission. The amendments to the Board of Adjustment, as shown on the screen, are to clarify that a quorum of 4 is required to conduct any business and vote on any matter, which is the requirement by state statutes. The
Hold on a minute, only a quorum of 4 of a 9-person board?
for Board of Adjustment.
Oh, Board of Adjustment.
Yeah, Board of
sorry.
Adjustment has 5 members.
Yeah, that's right, sorry.
Yep.
My,
For Planning Commission, which was the original purpose of the amendments this evening, was to remove the specific date referenced in the code for meetings. This has been replaced with a generic statement that regular and special meetings will be conducted, but without a specific date, time, or location to allow flexibility in scheduling. Additional amendments include adding a reference to the secretary position, which is referenced in state statute, and that secretary position serves as the vice chair. There is also the addition that a public hearing is required prior to removal of any citizen member if they're non-voluntarily removed. And the last amendment is full replacement of the powers and duties of the Planning Commission. Currently, the list is quite lengthy, and the red line version has been provided in the packet on page 52. The reason for redoing that is to specifically reference state statutes on the powers and duties of the Planning Commission, as well as provide a more succinct reference to Appendix B in the UDC, which does outline all of the planning applications that the Commission does review. And what that does is having this section more narrowly tailored does allow that when state statutes or Appendix B in the code are updated, that this section also does not need to be amended. The next section is related to window signage, which is currently not addressed in the code, and there is no clear guidance on how it should be regulated. The new section in the sign code would add a definition, as well as location, size, and design standards for exterior signage. Exterior signage will require a sign permit, while interior window signage is exempt from regulations and permitting, which is currently the case. Staff is proposing that window signage be allowed to cover up to 50% of transparent windows and doors for non-residential buildings. This coverage would be in addition to the 10% allowance for wall signs. The last sections being amended is to comply with updated home occupations and home-based business regulations that went into effect in the Missouri state statutes on August 28, 2022. Those statutes have been included in the packet for reference. Due to the number of revisions needed, staff is recommending a complete replacement of Section 40-4, Section 2, which is the residential home occupations section. Again, due to the number of changes, a red line version has been included in the packet on page 56 for comparison. Staff arrived at these conditions that we believe both complies with the intent of the state statutes, which is to provide no impact home-based businesses, the ability to operate with minimal regulation or oversight, while still protecting residential neighborhoods from businesses that may have a negative impact on health, safety, and certain nuisances. So I'll just kind of go over the highlights of where there are significant changes for the commission to be aware of. The first item is that home occupations can now be operated in an accessory structure or in the yard if not visible from the street. The restriction on employees and clients on the premises has been updated and is now based on occupancy limits, which could potentially allow more employees or clients on the premises than what would have previously been allowed in the past. No impact home occupations or home-based businesses are not required a business license. However, any business determined to be of impact but still allowed, or a daycare center that has required a state license is required a business license. The list of home occupations is not an exhaustive list and has been reduced to 7 general businesses that in the past have been treated as home businesses and have previously been allowed in the code. But we've added item 8, which does say any other home occupation or home-based business that meets provisions and is not prohibited, as outlined in this section, is permitted. And then rather than listing out a particular list of home occupations that are prohibited, we've left it a blanket statement referencing back to state statutes, which does state that any home occupation or home-based business that negatively impacts public health, sanitation, and safety is not in compliance with building or fire code, creates substantial traffic, or generates solid waste, hazardous waste, pollution, and/or noise that is out of character for residential property is prohibited. So staff believes that that prohibited section gives us the power to not issue a business license or pursue any kind of code enforcement needed to shut down a business that is illegally operating that is not in compliance with these provisions. There are several other sections that do need to be amended to accommodate the changes for home occupations, and that does include revisions to the definitions for home occupation, daycare center, and home occupation signs. That does include deleting daycare and daycare home as definitions, as they are now covered by the revision to the general daycare center definition. So currently we have 3 different definitions for daycares, and we are combining them into a single definition. That does also include the conditional standards for daycare centers. Again, we're striking home here and providing general standards that would apply to all daycare centers. In the land use table, we are striking daycare home and adding daycare center if state license is required, which is generally any commercial daycare or home daycare that has more than 6 children. Those would still be required to have a special use permit that would come through the Planning Commission and City Council for approval. Under home occupations, we are allowing conditional approval in C1, C2, and C3 commercial zoning districts. The reason for that is that home occupations could be allowed in any residential dwelling, and within our commercial zoning districts, it is possible to have upper floor residential units permitted in a mixed-use building, so we have accommodated that as well. The final section is related to the sign types permitted. We've added clarification to the residential district signage. The current sign limits on there apply to subdivision entrances and amenities only. Home occupations would be limited to 2 square feet of wall-mounted sign with no illumination. Staff does believe that these UDC text amendments provide clarifications and modifications to address the state statutes, as well as common planning and zoning issues, and staff recommends approval of these text amendments. And I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. Any questions for the Director concerning these changes? I think one that came to mind, and I know this probably overlaps some with codes, but scrapping businesses that people operate from their home. If they're doing that in their backyard and it's not seen by the street, does that mean that that is
There would still, the nuisance regulations would still apply. So that would include outdoor storage, commercial vehicles. This doesn't open up the ability for commercial vehicles that currently aren't permitted to still operate or be stored in residential properties. So those types of businesses would still likely fall under the would be under the prohibited list based on the nuisance regulations and other codes we already have adopted.
I'm sure that would be a question that some of our residents would have, not wanting that to be in their backyard.
Yep.
Or in their neighborhood. So, thank you.
Yep.
Any additional questions, comments? Or would entertain a motion?
Don't you have to do a public hearing first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anyone here? Thank you, Mayor. Anyone here that would like to speak either in favor or in opposition? I had the list and nobody's name had, nobody had signed up on it, and I forgot that we were at that point. Ask once again, anyone to speak in favor or in opposition? Then we will close the public hearing and ask again for the commission, any comments or motions?
I make a motion that we approve the suggested changes.
Commissioner,
Second.
and thank you for a second, Mayor. Last chance for questions. Seeing none, can we have the roll call?
Commissioner Warren, Commissioner Walton,
Aye.
Commissioner Monahan Bass, Chairman,
Aye.
and Mayor Larkey.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Next item that we do have, we need to,
Mr. Chair,
yes, Mayor.
the next item, I would make a motion that we postpone this till
Okay,
at least the next meeting, if not the meeting after.
very good.
I understand that I was elected as the vice chair, but under city statutes or ordinances, I can't do that. But with not everybody here and a new member that's going to come on, I would rather wait.
Okay, very good.
And I had talked to the attorney, and the attorney said that would be no problem.
Okay, thank you. And just for public knowledge, we did make a mistake in our meeting a month ago, and the mayor was elected as the vice chair, and none of us caught the fact that we were not supposed to let him do that. And so I appreciate that, Mayor, and we will definitely move that to our,
As long as nobody else has an issue with that, I would make that motion if we have to do it that way. To postpone until,
any opposition? And, I think by consensus, we can just move that to our next meeting. Hopefully having a little better attendance and representation by our commissioners at that time. So, next item would be approval of the 2023 Planning
Hey.
Commission.
Sorry, I did not get a second on that.
Oh,
That we move that.
that we move. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Thank you.
And all in favor of moving that to the next? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. We'll keep you around, Madison, keeping me on track. All right, on to the next item, which is the approval of the 2023 Planning Commission and Development Review Schedule. Director?
Yep, we did put this together for the commission for your review and approval. So this is the 2023 schedule, which does start in January. With that, we have the Tuesday meeting dates starting in January. And there's only a few dates. There's one date that will be on a Wednesday meeting because 4th of July is on a Tuesday, so we have made that the Wednesday after 4th of July rather than canceling that meeting. There are a few other internal deadline dates where the dates are moved up a day or two due to holiday conflicts. But generally, the development review scheduling timeline is the same or similar to what it has been in the past.
All right. Any questions on the? Any questions on the schedule for 2023? The director.
I make a motion, we approve the 2023 Planning Commission and Development Review Schedule as presented.
All right. Thank you. We do have a motion and second. Any questions or comments? And this can be done by, does it need a roll call? We have done a voice vote. That's what I thought, that voice vote would be okay on this. So all those in favor of approval of the 2023 Planning Commission schedule, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Director.
Yeah, for the next meeting we have scheduled for Monday, November 21st. We do not have any agenda items, so that meeting will be canceled. The next meeting will be Monday, December 5th. We will have at least one item for the partial vacation of some street right-of-way in the downtown area. And then tomorrow is election day. There is recreational marijuana that is on the ballot. If that is passed by Missouri voters, we will likely have some code amendments related to that. If passed, there's a pretty quick turnaround time that the state has given medical marijuana dispensaries the opportunity to apply and be approved for recreational marijuana facilities. So that is something that our code will have to address pretty quickly, so that we will likely get that before the next meeting to get that completed in December.
Any other items? We don't have Mr. McDonough here tonight, so someone want to take his place?
Make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all very much. We'll see you next month.